The market has been brutal for brand new mid-engine Ferraris.
New models used to hold value fairly well, but the latest one featuring the hybrid powertrains are dropping faster than ever. At the same time, prices for slightly older models are surging.
So what's going on? Is this just temporary, or is the broader exotic car market down? Or perhaps the market is sending Ferrari a message.
Today we're breaking down exactly what's happening in the market by investigating the latest developments in the price trends for both the old and the new models, and comparing them to some of their competitors. By the end of this video, you'll know which Ferraris are smart buys for value-conscious buyers and which ones you may want to avoid.
We start by investigating the price trends for the models that have been hit the hardest.
The SF90 and 296. Both models continue to be among the quickest depreciating ones that feature on the channel. Starting with the SF90, we can see a brutal depreciation curve. SF90 started to drop immediately after their introduction at insane rates. In 2023, the depreciation slowed a bit but remained high. Last year the coupes lost 15.5% and the spiders 11.7%. The MSRP plus 25% in options amounts to roughly $740,000 for a coupe, meaning that owners are looking at a loss of more than $300,000.
More granular data reveals that the depreciation rate is likely to remain high, but that the worst part seems to be behind us.
A breakdown of the model years shows that the trends are flattening for the older coupes. Supply in the coupe market is decreasing. Cars have been selling slightly quicker, marking a trend reversal, and discounts on unsold inventory is less negative.
The second model that's depreciating at insane rates is the 296.
Similar to the SF90, 296 prices started to fall quickly after its introduction. Last year the coupes lost 18.1% and the spiders 14.4%. There are some signs that depreciation is starting to slow down, but they are not as strong as in the SF90 market. We can also see that there's now a price overlap between the 296 spiders and SF90 coupes.
Now buying a 296 or SF90 means that depreciation will be a significant part of your total cost of ownership. So it's not a bad idea to limit further cost increases by protecting your car from accidental damage such as scratches on your front bumper caused by speed bumps and windshield cracks caused by rocks. To protect your car from these dangers, you can install the latest in skid plate and windshield protection film technology from exclusive Motorworks.
Their automatic skid plates are the thinnest on the market, are custom fitted by using 3D laser scanning technology and require no drilling, screws or rivets to attach. The windshield skin keeps your windshield safe from things like cracks and chips, preventing costly replacements. Moreover, you can install the windshield skin yourself without professional help. You can order skid plate kits and windshield skin kits for your car at exclusivemotorworks.com.
Now before jumping to conclusions about new Ferraris with a hybrid powertrain, there are a few important questions we need to ask. Bearing in mind that these depreciation rates can be the result of idiosyncratic factors like the hybrid powertrains and external factors like economic circumstances.
First, we need to ask ourselves if the 296 and SF90 aren't depreciating at high rates because they're fairly new. Second, it's important to investigate if the high depreciation rate is perhaps influenced by a weak exotic car market.
To answer the first question, we should ideally compare the depreciation curves of the SF90 and 296 to the depreciation curves of all the previous mid-engine models. Unfortunately, I don't have all of that data, but we can still make some like-for-like comparisons.
We can, for example, compare the price trend of the SF90 to the F8. From September 2023 onwards, the F8 Spider and SF90 coupe market had fairly similar market compositions. The median model year is 2022 in both markets and has remained fairly stable, while the average mileage differenced by 1000 miles but increased more in the F8 Spider market. Yet, we can see that the price development is completely different for an F8 Spider than for an SF90 coupe. Compared to September 23, the SF coupe lost 32.1%, while the F8 Spider lost only 9.9%. The numbers are basically the same if we would only compare 2022 cars.
It's evident that the F8 Spider did much better than an SF90, and the same conclusion follows if we compare a 2023 296 coupe to a 2023 F8 Spider.
The 296 lost 25%, while this is 8% for the F8 Spider. Again, the difference is enormous.
Now, out of all of the Ferrari models, the front-engine one are perhaps most notorious for their depreciation. Yet, even the A12 did better than the SF90 and 296.
Comparing the A12 convertible to the SF90 coupe, so the orange and the green line, it's evident that the depreciation on the A12 was much lower. The market composition in terms of age and mileage are fairly similar from June 2024 onwards. Since then, SF90 coupes lost 22.4%, while this was 10.5% for the A12 GTS. The numbers don't change much if we compare the exact same model years to each other.
So the high depreciation rate in the 296 and SF90 market doesn't seem to be the result of the newness of the cars. After all, other models like the F8 and A12 depreciated much less in like-for-like comparisons. So the hypothesis that the high depreciation rates are driven by idiosyncratic factors, like the hybrid systems, seems increasingly likely. Moreover, while the new models are punished, the old ones are celebrated in ways we haven't seen before.
Over here we have the year-over-year price changes for most Ferraris after roughly 2023. The picture is clear, right? The hybrid models are losing the most by a large margin. Nothing else comes close. At 6.8%, the Roma Coupe is the quickest depreciating full ICE car in the list. The Roma Spider might get close to the hybrids, but more data is needed to calculate the year-over-year change. Moving down further, we find a few models that sit a few percentage points below the 0 point, like the Portofinos, California T, A12 and GTC4 Lusos. Around the 0 point we find the F8, 360, and slightly above it we find cars like the 599, 488, F430, FF and F12. Moving down even further, we find the F355 and 458. And finally, we arrive at the special models.
Holy moly! These are truly unprecedented numbers.
360 Challenge Stradales, 488 Pistas, 458 Speciales and F430 Scots are all up by more than 40%.
I'm fully aware that it looks like something is wrong with the data, but I've shown these numbers to you before, just when the search started. And many of you, including people from the trade, confirmed that this is the new reality. Moreover, while numbers for something like a 360 CS are limited, there are more than enough pistas for sale to get reliable estimates.
These crazy increases, but also the strong values in the rest of the non-hybrid market, isn't something completely new. In the previous market updates, we've seen flattening price trends unfold for cars like the F8 and 488, and saw them strengthen even further for cars like the F12, 458 and F430.
Let's have a quick look at some of these trends. We start with the crazy ones.
458 Speciales surged between March and July. Moreover, the increase surpassed the increase that we saw during the pandemic. At the same time, the cars also sold quicker compared to what we saw in the pandemic. Upward momentum though seems to be fading. We can see the same kind of trend in the Pista market. A sudden jump between March and June, a continuation of the increase and a potential slowdown. The normal 458 market weakened slightly since the pandemic price stop at the end of 2022, but has been on fire ever since. Prices surged less than for the Speciales, but still surpassed previous highs. That is, if you ignore inflation.
Looking at the models for which prices have been stable for a long time, we can now see that price trends are starting to curl up.
F12 prices, for example, were relatively stable between mid-23 and the end of 2025. But started to increase slowly now, and the same applies to the FF. 488 prices fell relatively quickly after the pandemic, but also these trends reversed in 2025. Even Californias and California T prices flattened. The Californias were never known for their strong residuals.
But there's more.
Most of the models in the list are selling at the same rate as historically observed, or even slightly quicker. And cars that aren't selling within 3 months aren't discounted more than we've seen historically.
There's one small exception for all of these ICE cars. That's the Roma.
The Roma is the only ICE model that's depreciating relatively quickly compared to the models that we saw before. Last year the coupe lost 8.7%. It's hardly surprising that this is mainly driven by the 2024 and 2023 cars. The older Romas lost less. Similarly, the Spider is likely to have a higher depreciation rate.
So it's fair to state that with exception of the Roma, prices strengthened for many Ferrari models, even for the ones that are relatively new like the F8 and A12. And all of this contrasts sharply to what's happening in the 296 and SF90 market.
Looking at the price trends for the ICE Ferraris, it's no surprise that the general sports and supercar market is doing relatively well. Over here we have the year-over-year price changes for cars that feature on my channel. It includes everything from Supras to 911s to A12s. We can see that the general market strengthened in 2025. The average yearly depreciation rate decreased from approximately 4.8% to 1%. It therefore means that we cannot speak of a weak market. There are other models that suffer from high depreciation rates like the 992 GT3 RS and Cayman GT4 RS, but these cars are dropping from values above MSRP. This isn't the case for the 296 and SF90. Even the McLaren Artura, also a hybrid supercar, depreciated at lower rates than the 296. We can see that coupe values are 8.3% lower than last year. And remember that this was 18.1% for the 296.
Now everything that we've seen so far points towards the conclusion that something strange is happening in the SF90 and 296 market. Moreover, it's not just the US market. Similar shifts are happening in Germany, albeit at slightly smaller magnitudes.
In a like-for-like comparison, F8s were stable while 296s lost 6.8% during last year. Also, when comparing the 458 Speciale Coupe in the US and Germany, we can see that the shape of the trend is similar, but that the increase is much lower in Germany. Prices are up by 19.2% versus 56% in the US. Note that the German trend is displayed in euros and the US one in dollars.
Now the data of course doesn't tell us why the market is pushing 296 and SF90 prices down. We speculated that it's the hybrid powertrain, but perhaps it's something else. What do you think? Please let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section.
But there's a twist. Despite these price trends, Ferrari as a company is doing extremely well and better than most of its competitors. Order books are full, implying that new customers don't seem to care yet about these massive depreciation numbers or simply accept them to get access to the special models.
Let's wrap up.
The 296 and SF90 markets have been heading south for a long time now, and I think it's fair to say that the depreciation rate is much higher than was anticipated. They are extremely high compared to other new Ferraris from similar model years. They are high compared to the general Ferrari market, which actually moved in the opposite direction, and high compared to the rest of the market, which also moved in the opposite direction. Moreover, the issue doesn't seem to be isolated to the US market.
As of now, it doesn't seem to affect Ferrari all that much. The order book is still full. Of course, in the future these high depreciation rates for hybrid models might become a problem. Again, please let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Now, provided you're a value-conscious buyer who's in the market for a used Ferrari, a low mileage, relatively young 296 or SF90 seems like a bad idea from a value perspective. Older models like the F8 are holding up much better.
From a performance perspective, it's of course not even close, but the trade-off between depreciation and performance you need to make yourself.
And with that we arrive at the end of this video. Now if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car prices but would like to see a video for a different car, head over to my channel. Over there you find data-driven market analysis for a large variety of cars. Can't find the car you're looking for? Let me know the name of the car by commenting it down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I'll make a video about it. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks for a fresh market update.